You found a skeleton. How would you tell people that it's you personally? How would you decide?
Well, interesting question. I don't know. I'd have to do some research on that.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Dapper Journal Club. This is our fourth one, I think, now? Or, no, third one. Yes, third one. But also, happy Festivus to all of you celebrating Festivus out there. And in fact, we're going to be having some Festivus themes going on today, but we will be explaining that in a little bit. First, Vishanti, how are you today?
Oh, I'm hanging in there.
That's better than not hanging in there.
Yeah.
All right. So, for those of you who don't remember, our first Dapper Journal Club was about a paper by one Gabriella Haynes. Dr. Haynes was, she is a paleontologist, but she's been hired by Answers in Genesis, so I guess now was a paleontologist is more appropriate. And she wrote a paper that was abysmal, trying to argue that Archaeopteryx was not a bird. And then last week, Dr. Joel Duff and myself and Vishanti sat down and we went through the response to her paper by Dr. Marcus Ross, Matt McLean, and a few other people whose names I didn't recognize. So, and yeah, they basically were echoing almost all of the same things that Vishanti and I were saying in our first Dapper Journal Club. And now we're going to be taking a look at the Haynes response, which we're going to get into it a little bit later because first I want to explain what we're doing for Festivus. But yeah, it's a weird thing. So, first, I want to say we are tracking drinks. We are not, however, using most of the drinking rules because we don't have a video to respond to. However, if you do send anything to the effect that AIG or a bag of dicks, we'll take a drink. If you send memberships, we'll take a drink. So we already have some of those coming in, so we're going to take some drinks for that. But also, it is Festivus. And as we all know, the Festivus festivities, if you will, begin with the airing of grievances. And so, if you decide to air any grievances in the form of super chat or a milestone chat, not only will we air them for you out loud for everyone to hear, but we will also take a drink for each aired grievance. So that is how Festivus is working here on the Dapper Dino channel. Now, we've got a few things to read already. Let's see. Fade to Gray, It's Not Your Fault, for $2 said, I'd preemptively like to say F 2024. That sounds like an airing of a grievance to 2024, so we'll take a drink for it.
Yeah.
All right, now, next, oh, there goes Vishanti. Well, I have no idea why she left.
Sorry, that was weird.
Welcome back.
What the heck?
I don't know. Ben Thick Tunicat's Fluorescent Pterodactyl, B2022, sent 5 memberships. They went to Skeletor, over 9,000, James Duncan, Left-Handed Jedi, Snorefoot, Nether 6, Hair. There you go, sorry. So we'll take 5 drinks for that. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Ben Thick Tunicat also sent for £10. There once was a McRae called Steve who had a knack for getting us all peeved. I've heard his trouser snake is spectacularly fake and that he calls it his AIG. Okay, we'll take it.
Oh my god.
Goodness. Imagine spending thousands of dollars to get a YouTube channel back and then just squandering it. It's like a great investment there, buddy.
Guess I'm built different.
Yeah.
Yeah, really.
Fits of... Hold on, this is long. Bits of Where'd the Carbon Go, Roger Rage? Yes. Yeah, where did the carbon go, Roger? That's one of my favorite things about the mud fossil, where he's like, this is literally just the decayed remains of this animal. And it's like, okay, well, why isn't it mostly carbon? Like, animals are. Says, AIG is a bag of Megalosaurus femur bones. Scrotum humanum.
Yes.
We'll take a drink for that. So remember, AIG is a bag of dicks, any super chat or anything like that that has the kaiju emojis, any gifted memberships, and any airing of grievances on either super chats or milestone chats. That is how you increase that drink counter. All right, so let's take a look at this. So the first thing I want to say about this is, this is very unusual. So this response So you can see it's reply to the response to the debate over the classification of Archaeopteryx as a bird. So, we're like 3 levels deep in the Inception machine here now. This was actually published directly following the paper that we went over last time. And look, I'm just going to call them papers. They're not really papers, right? Just like, when the kids are playing cops and robbers, no one's actually robbing anyone and no one's actually a cop. That's the same thing happening here, but I'm just going to call it papers. I'm going to pretend in my speech that ARJ is a real journal just so I don't have to keep pointing this out. But anyway, this followed directly in the issue that this was published in, which I think was like the issue from like a couple months ago. I don't remember exactly. So, actually, you should probably tell us if I just scroll down. Okay, December 6th, 2023. So yeah, this month apparently. So yeah, now that's unusual, right? Normally, if you get a response to a paper and that response passes peer review, you just publish it. And if the original authors or anyone else wants to make a response to that response, well, they're going to just have to wait to read it until it's published, and then they can come up with a response that itself needs to go through the peer review process to get published. Instead, what must have happened, there's no other option, right, is the ARJ got this response from, Drs. Ross and McLean and others, and before publishing it, they must have let Gabriella Haynes look at it so that she could write her own reply before it was even really published, which is not normally how you do things. That's not how journals work. So, yeah. We got some furious typing.
Sorry. Yeah, multitasking. But also, reading the chat, it's like, I had some issues with my browser, so Vadim was like, did Vishanti get abducted by aliens? Like, no, it's just freaking type problems, but they're all fixed now.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Van Dahlia, 1998, who's been a member for 38 months and is at the Amniote level, says, next thing you'll tell me is when you play freeze tag, you weren't actually frozen. Lies! Citation needed. Yeah. Yeah. All right. So, let's take a look at this. Now, remember, we largely agreed with all of the responses that she got. Now, there were some, little bits of young Earth nonsense that kind of felt like they had to stick in there for some reason, and yeah, okay, we didn't really agree with that stuff, but whatever. Turkey Sloth, should I watch this before finishing the other one? I can't answer that question, really. I don't know, because I haven't read through all of this, so I'm not entirely sure how this is going to go. But we'll take a look. Okay, so we'll take a look at the abstract first. This paper aims to address some issues raised by McLean et al. 2023 in an article entitled "Their Response to the Debate Over Classification of Archaeopteryx." Now I'm going to double-click on this, or well, open this up just for a second so we can take a look at something. When was this published? December 6th, 2023. When was this? When was this published, though? The one we're actually responding to.
Huh.
Interesting. So like I said...
That looks like the same day.
It is the same day. So like I said, this is not something that a response was published, and that was when Dr. Haynes got to read it, as is normal practice for this kind of thing. She was giving pre-publication access to the response. That's not appropriate. Skeletor over 9,000, who's been a member for 13 months and is at the Amniote level, says, here's my grievance. My father got me more insultingly bad gifts this year, Godzilla. Well, that is unfortunate. I'll take a drink for that grievance. That's goodness. Actually, apparently my parents tried to send me a package, and they gave the address that should have worked, and when they did,
yeah,
the USPS, the United States Postal Service, just wouldn't accept it. Like, we don't have that address in our system. I'm like, well, what if you get rid of the... Because, the streets around here all tend to have, like, a direction, like, north, south, east, west. Like, what if you get rid of the direction? I'm like, yeah, that'll work. So then, it gets all the way to, the local post office. And then they decide it's undeliverable. And it's sent back to where my parents live, thousands of miles away. So it's just not getting here, apparently. Turkey Sloth, who's been a member for 3 months and is at the Tetrapod level, says, also 3 months with a Godzilla. All right, congrats, man. Ben Thick Tunicate Fluorescent Pterodactyl, B2022, for £5, says, my grievance is that my sibling, parentheses S, Never say thank you for the gifts I get my nieces and nephews. Yeah, that can be annoying. I would, yeah. I'll take a drink. I actually got a video call from 2 of my nieces the other day, and boy, was that chaotic. Kids bouncing off the walls and such. Sometimes literally.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was like,
Woo!
nice to talk to you, but I'm glad I'm not intimately involved in this particular situation, trying to get everyone to go to bed. Actually, my brother, the girl's father, said to the one I was talking to, like, hey, did you brush your teeth? And she just says back, yes. And, like, I've been on this call with her the whole time. I'm like, are you lying? And she just nods at me. I'm like, well, then go brush your teeth. Come on. Anyway.
Buff.
Just lying to her dad right there in front of me, who knows she's lying. Like, I'm not going to take his side on the brushing of teeth. Anyway. Let's actually get it. Oh, wait, no. We got $20 from Carrie Bronson. Counterclaim. She didn't... Counterclaim. She did not have pre-access. She's a time traveler. This also means she was, in fact, there. Buy yourself something good. Thank you very much. Yeah, that, I guess, is another possibility. Maybe she's actually a time agent in the Temporal Cold War. I mean, can we rule it out completely? I can't. She's out there with, what was it, Ensign Daniels? Is that his name?
Yeah.
Yeah. He's hanging out with Ensign Daniels in the time ship.
The future guy.
All right. This paper aims to address some issues raised by McLean et al. 2023 in the article titled blah, blah, blah. Their reply presents many logical fallacies. Okay. I mean, I think it did in a few places, but mostly to do with young Earth creationism. Misrepresentations, I disagree entirely. And decontextualization of my arguments. Now, that she might have an argument for. Because, it's easy to interpret someone's words the way they sound to you and not the way they meant them. Jake Nelson, who's been a member for 12 months, says, my grievance is that I'm at work today. Oh, they made you work on Festivus? All right.
Aw, that's a grievance.
Yeah, that's worth a drink. We should start a petition to get Festivus recognized as a federal holiday.
I'd be down with that.
Yeah. I want to get, I want to add a few federal holidays. Let's add one for, like, Festivus. I don't think we could reasonably get, like, all 8 days of Hanukkah, but, like, the first one, maybe? Or, like, maybe the last one,
Honestly,
since it's the one with the most
in terms
candles?
of federal holidays, I would be happy if they would give us Yom Kippur as a federal holiday.
Yeah, we'll do that, yeah.
If nothing else.
Okay, Yom Kippur. And also Diwali. I want a Diwali federal holiday.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Because, you know what?
And
There's a
if you really
significant
want to,
population in
like-
here that celebrate Diwali every year.
I mean, yeah, and if you want to hook up the Sikh community, you can make the Saki also a holiday.
Sure. I mean, there is the argument that, like, okay, if we make every holiday a federal holiday, there's going to be holidays, like, every single day, and that probably won't work. And I get that.
Not bothering me.
I mean, look, sometimes the federal government does things that it probably should do, and it might not be able to do them if it's always a holiday. So, And plus, all the things they shouldn't do, they ignore holidays for anyway. Like, bombing brown people for no reason. You think I got Christmas off in the Navy? No. No, I didn't.
Nope.
Not if we were underway. Savage Monkeyfish Cobra for $5 says, my grievance, a certain someone said he would watch a certain video and has 250 days hence, 250 days hence, in spite of making responses and insulting everyone. Yeah, that is a valid grievance.
How about that? Very much.
What do you know? For £10, Christopher Sanford says, alternative hypothesis. Dr. Haynes was so painfully aware of the issues with her paper that she had a response to their response prepared to cover her most probably lying backside. Like, it was pre-prepared because she knew what the complaints were going to be. You know what? That's also at least possible. The problems with her paper were pretty glaringly obvious. Okay. Basically, she's like, oh, no, I disagree with them. Yeah, okay. Of course you do. First, I would like to thank Dr. McLean. Yeah, no one cares. Logical fallacies and misrepresentations. Okay, here we go. She comes in swinging. This is her first quote, which is a weird way to, arrange these. Savage Monkeyfish Cobra for $2 says, I propose all Catholic feast days for holidays. No. Jeez, that's just all of the days. Not even Catholics want that. Like, every single day is, like, one or two, at least, saints' feasts. It's, like, all over the place. Yeah, no. But what about other Christmas? Should we add, was it Gregorian Christmas? So that we can have December 25th and the other December 25th? Like 2 weeks later, off?
Yeah, really, that'd be cool.
I mean, I just saw in the news that Ukraine is switching from December 25th to December 25th for Christmas.
Very progressive
So,
of them.
yeah, they're switching Christmas. They're moving it back 2 weeks this year from December 25th to the other December 25th, the one you and I are used to. I think this is mostly a ploy to further separate themselves culturally from Russia, which is celebrating Christmas on the December 25th that's 2 weeks away from December 25th. So, anyway.
I love having multiple calendars.
I mean, welcome to planet Earth that has never had a single calendar. What year did it become?
I was assured that the Mayan calendar was the one.
Oh, that's a good point.
Even though they used pictures of the Aztec sunstone to talk about it.
Aztecs, Mayans, Mexica, Incas, they're all the same. What year did it become last Rosh Hashanah?
What year? What?
What year did it become last time we celebrated Rosh Hashanah?
Oh, 5784, I think.
See? Even more calendars. Let's see. Haynes disparages those who use definitions for taxonomic groups. Which is a hugely simplified version of this, right? Like, they went into this argument about why dictionary definitions are actually not a good idea because science is using a much more technical terminology than dictionaries, and why, you actually have to dig into the literature to actually get taxonomic definitions and whatnot. So then she's like, based on Oxford Languages definition, to disparage. So she's going back to the dictionary. Okay. Yeah, so this is her this entire paragraph is just like tone policing the authors of the paper. You know how much I don't care about tone policing? Like, entirely. I just don't care about her tone policing them. That paper was far more polite than I would have been. It's far more polite than I was, let's be fair. Goop23 for $2 says, my grievance is apartment hunting. Ooh, yeah, that's raw. That's always rough. Sorry about that. Take a drink for that. Yeah, apartment. Oh, by the way, I'm drinking a strawberry White Claw. There you go.
Ooh, I didn't even know White Claw had strawberry. That's cool.
Yeah, they I got a variety pack that had blackberry, strawberry, mango, and pineapple.
Ooh, time for me to try some new White Claws.
Yeah, I think it's like their tropical variety pack 2 or something. I mostly get it because, like, it's got mango. I'm a big fan of mango. Let's see. Haynes sees cladistics as anti-biblical and Linnaean taxonomy as biblical because the former is based on evolution, while the latter is based upon concepts of created kinds. However, this is an overly simplistic view. That's what they said. So, it's not generally good form to use the first person in papers. Like, generally you want to not do that. Also, Vandalian 1998 for $5 says, what year is it on the calendar you started using back in the Jurassic? Oh, we didn't have a calendar. We were just dinosaurs doing dinosaur stuff. We didn't care about keeping track of which year it was. So, yeah. What is that, chips? Is that chips?
Cheesy poofs!
Nice. Also, DM Current Issues in Science Wing says, my grievance is with the previous administration for inventing COVID and getting me sick this holiday season. Take a drink. Yes, they definitely invented COVID. And then did virtually nothing about it. Okay, so, I never stated, suggested, or implied that Linnaean taxonomy was biblical. Didn't you, though? Because that's how I took it, right? When you were on about how Linnaeus was a creationist and how, his definitions had the idea of kinds in mind, even if he thought that there was species fixity, which you don't think anymore. Like, you might not have explicitly said Linnaean taxonomy is biblical, but, like, you were towing right up to the edge of that cliff right there.
Yeah, she was basically saying that he came up with it because he was, like, a creationist.
Yeah. I mean, and the thing is, sure, maybe that's not what she meant, but it's what everyone I know who read the paper, including other young Earth creationists, took away from it, right? So, when everyone disagrees, that what you said means what you wanted it to say, what that means is you have failed at communicating properly. Right? Now, because I'm not someone who thinks that authorial intent is meaningless, but fundamentally, if everyone reads your work in a particular way that is contrary to your authorial intent, then what you wrote failed to express what you intended it to express. And your intent really doesn't matter at that point. You didn't do it. Anyway. So when they write this is an overly simplistic view, it represents a straw man fallacy. I mean, look, it's how I took the paper. So my goal is not to state, suggest, or imply which method is more biblical than others. Then why did you keep calling baraminology and cladistics unbiblical? Right? Like, you kept on going on about that. So that assertion is incorrect. It demonstrates, maybe unintentionally, a way of misrepresenting. Okay, so in a recent publication, argued archaeopteryx should be considered a bird rather than a dinosaur, that birds and dinosaurs are obviously distinct, and that statistical baraminology is too influenced by evolutionary thinking to be used by creationists, and that scientists should only use Linnaean taxonomy in classifying organisms. Now, this is actually a part that Vishanti and I and Dr. Duff, we took a little bit of issue, right? Because none of us took her paper as strongly as the reply did, where they took her to be saying that scientists should only use Linnaean taxonomy. And that's not the impression that I got, or that Vishanti got, or that Dr. Duff got. Mm-hmm. So that is an area where I do disagree with them. I do think that she was emphasizing Linnaean taxonomy as like the primary standard that we should use, but I don't think she was making the exclusive claims. So I actually do agree with her here when she says, I never implied or suggested only Linnaean taxonomy should be used. I do agree that that's not what she said. And I do think that, they overstated their case there.
Yeah.
So, you know what? Fair enough, Dr. Haynes. I think everyone that I've talked to about this particular set of papers would agree that, they took it too far there. Haynes argues that the presence of feathers has been key to the classifying the animal as a bird based on the classical convention and conventional taxonomy developed by Linnaeus in the 18th century. That's not my argument or conclusion. It is from one citation that Gauthier and de Quero, I'm not even sure what language that's from, so I'm not sure, cited. I cited it in my paper on page 288. But that's the thing, though. At every step of the way in the paper, her definition for what was a bird centered around feathers without ever bothering to define what a feather is, right? It seemed like it was just like, well, you know a feather when you see it, and if it has a feather, it's a bird. Well, okay, but that's like your whole point. Now, sure, maybe this exact phrase isn't something that you would have said, but the entirety of the paper seemed to hinge on feather equals bird, and then disputing whether things like the filamentous structures that we see in animals like Sinosauropteryx are actually feathers, without ever bothering to define feather in the first place. So, I mean, I guess you can contest that this is not how you would have phrased it, but, like, that's the impression that everyone seems to get. It was, like, feathers, and then some undefined transition in caudal vertebrae that I don't even understand what she was trying to get at. So then she says, it appears that Haynes assigns the number of dinosaurs to birds, Microraptor, Sinornithosaurus, Anchiornis, and Caudipteryx, which, I mean, yeah, she did. McLean et al. Are begging the question with this claim. Are they? Are they assuming their conclusion in order to argue? I mean, their conclusion is that these are dinosaurs, and they're saying that you are assigning them to birds, which you did. I don't see how that's begging the question.
Yeah, I don't understand. I think she's just listing fallacies and hoping one of them sticks.
She's doing a Bodhi Hodge where she just comes up with a fallacy off the top of her head, and she's like, that's... And just names a fallacy. I mean, maybe.
I'm just gonna name it a fallacy. I'm gonna make one up.
Heather Shoggoths
looks like fallacy.
Heather Shoggoths are smarter than Roger Kuhn says for $2. My grievance is a surprise leaky roof. Oh man, that blows. I'm sorry about that. I hope that gets fixed easily and it's not too expensive. DM current issues in Science Wings for $2 says if it's a dinosaur and it has feathers, then it's a bird. Yes, direct quote from the late, great David Menton. Take a drink. Yeah, he said, if a dinosaur has feathers, then it's a bird. It's like, okay, so birds are dinosaurs then, right? So that's...
Yeah, really. That's,
as he ends his talk on how...
Great! Yeah. As the Regina George meme where it's like, so you agree that dinosaurs and birds, they're like the same. Birds are dinosaurs. Cool.
Philipunk the Ape Istivist for $2. Yeah, those are US dollars. Says, my grievance is capitalism. Fair enough. He says, while engaging in capitalism the entire way by encouraging people to pay him money to get him to drink more. You know. Anyway. It is not indisputable that those genera are dinosaurs. Well, you didn't really do anything to dispute it, because you neither gave an adequate definition for dinosaur nor bird. Other scientists argue they are not dinosaurs, but are birds. Who? This is where you put a citation. Do I have the citation needed animation on here? I might not. Yes, I do.
I hope so.
Citation needed.
Is that saying on you?
You need a citation there, Dr. Haynes. Also, I cannot assign any genera because other scientists have already done that. What are you talking about? When you write a paper saying, I think this species is actually, or this genus or whatever is in this taxon, that is you assigning it to a taxon, right? Now, you might not ship the consensus, and therefore your assignment might end up failing, but that's what you're doing. Then, based on my understanding, I agree with some of the scientists' assignments. Again, who, but also, yeah, you're definitely not in the mainstream there. And you didn't give any definitions, but you did assign them, so I don't... Yeah. Haynes argues that the presence of feathers is also key to classifying animals as a bird on the classical dimensional, blah, blah, blah. She later, following the classical and traditional Linnaean classification and reasoning, it is concluded there is no reason Archaeopteryx to be anything other than a bird. You notice that what followed here in the paper that she's responding to was the mention that Linnaeus includes not having teeth as a defining characteristic of bird, and she just ignored that and didn't talk about it at all, right? That's what happened in her paper. That's why when we reviewed her paper, we pulled up Systema Naturae in Latin, the original Latin, and started going through the definition of aves in frickin' Latin. You know how rarely I want to read Latin? I basically never want to read Latin. Like, I'm never going around thinking, like, you know what? I really want to read some Ovid in the original Latin. Like, that's just not a thing I do. Like, oh, Caesar's Gallic Wars. Yeah, let's read that in Latin. Winnie, weedy, wiki. Yeah, no, I don't want to. I don't try to read Latin. Benthic Tunicate's Fluorescent Pterodactyl for B2022 for £2 says they're begging the question equals projection with a Godzilla. I mean, it does seem like she might come closer to begging the question than they did, in that she seems to just presume a whole bunch of stuff that she's trying to argue for. So, okay. So she listed 5 reasons: the presence of feathers, which is a key diagnostic feather for bird identification. That is true. It's not the only one. And following the classical Linnaean classification reasoning is concluded there is no reason anything other than bird. The Linnaean classification is the last one on the list. Yeah, but you made such a big deal out of it. Like, I read the paper. You were harping on Linnaeus. I'm not arguing that Linnaean classification should be the ultimate way to classify Archaeopteryx. That's how it seemed to everyone who read that paper. Right? This is just... I don't really think that this... Okay. This feels like trying to gaslight the reader, right? I'm not saying that she's trying to make everyone think that they're crazy, but, like, you're basically just trying to retcon the past. When the paper's right there, we all read it, we know what you said, and you're basically just like, no, that's not what I meant. That's not even what I said. Okay. I never said, suggested, or implied that my paper or elsewhere. Yeah, you did, though. Mentioning only the last part of my conclusion decontextualizes and misrepresents my arguments. That's great, but are they wrong that Linnaeus would not classify Archaeopteryx as a bird based on his own criteria? Also, for decades, most secular and creation researchers have considered Archaeopteryx a bird, so the idea it is a bird is not a novelty that I invented. No one's saying that it was. They're saying that your use of Linnaeus to define what birds are is inappropriate because Archaeopteryx does not fit the Linnaean description of a bird. And you aren't addressing that, right? Like, at no point in her paper did she mention that one of the requirements according to Linnaeus to classify an animal as a bird is that it not have teeth. She never mentioned that. When they pointed out, when McLean, I'm just going to call it Ross et al., right? Because he's the lead author. When Ross et al. pointed out that this was the case. She currently seems to not have a response to that. So what I take that is as her admitting tacitly that, yeah, that was a problem and I shouldn't have done that, but I'm not going to admit it. How else can I take it? I mean, Vishanti, do you have a nicer way for that I could take this? I ask Vishanti.
I was going to say, do you know who you're asking?
Yeah, between the two of us, I'm by far the nicer. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. You're in some cases you're here to help.
Spend not hating. That's the hating I do for you.
Yeah, you're my proxy hater.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Haynes states that if the feather is defined as filaments, then they appear in basal coelurosaurs, such as Sinosauropteryx. I would need more of the sentence to know exactly what she's about to go into, but whatever. The whole paragraph explains my point. I do not agree or state that feathers are defined as filaments. Yeah, they don't say that you do either. They're just saying that since you don't define feathers, depending on how we define them, we include huge swaths of animals that no one thinks of as birds. And if we define them too narrowly, then we're not even sure what modern means, right? Like, you didn't talk about all the different kinds of modern feathers. Are cassowary bristles feathers? Are phyloplumes feathers? Are semiplumes feathers? Are downy feathers feathers? No one knows. Ben, Thick Tunicate B2022 just gifted 10 Dapper Dinosaur memberships. Thank you so much. They went to Sell Some Awe. You are Victoria. I'm not, but thank you. Thylaco Leon Kennedy, Alerted Bridge 97, Ian Debunked, Vesta Freya, and Dragon Spartan Official. Oh, and also Christopher Kennedy Theist and David Taylor. So here come 10 whole drinks. My goodness. You guys are going to make me go through all of this vodka-infused seltzer. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Take a quick break for make sure I don't get brain freeze or anything. Okay, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Thank you very much, everybody. Make sure you send sessile, not pelagic tunicates, and tetrapods. See,
can't tell me what to
Knee's
do.
got it. Knee and Ben
Spamming
thick
all
tunicates.
pelagic
They get it.
tunicates.
No,
Tunicate
they're so gross.
I think you protest too much.
You know what they look like, right?
I'm just saying.
They look like the insert to a particular kind of toy that sounds like flashlight that comes in a clear variety.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they look like. So, just saying. Okay, so the whole point of my paragraph, you have a law. The main point here is that those definitions are arbitrary and ever-changing. They will depend on which phylogenetic hypothesis were made. Yeah, but you have to give a definition, Haynes, right? If you don't give a definition for what feather means, then no one can know what you mean when you say that an animal has feathers, right? We can make some reasonable inferences, like you'll probably conclude that any extant bird has feathers, right? So we know that at least those things count as feathers, but we don't know what else might or might not or why, and if all of the integumentary structures of that animal count as feathers. We also can't say that, right? So, like, do contour feathers count? Yeah, probably, but we can't say that for, like, feathery spines. What about the reticulate scales on bird feet that are, in fact, actually feathers that just have a stunted growth pattern? Do those count as feathers? Because if you count those as feathers, well, I've got news for you. Most of Dinosauria has reticulate scales that are morphologically indistinguishable from the scales on a bird's foot. So, like, how do you know those aren't feathers? I don't know. So, yeah. Oh, and DM Current Issues in Science Wing for $2 says, wait, does Haynes think birds are real? Yeah, she probably does. She doesn't realize that they were all replaced by government spy drones. So...
Yeah, birds aren't real.
Yeah, of course not.
No, why we're having this conversation.
Yeah, well, I mean, that is a separate conversation, but you know, yeah, for all of you bird realists out there, maybe stop believing everything NASA tells you, because you know, NASA, giant. Actually, I have a conversation scheduled for the 10th of January with a flat earther. Like that's a thing that seems like it's happening. So yeah, I think we're gonna have Jackson Wheat on and a flat earther. And we're gonna talk about flat Earth, and yeah, that'll be interesting. I'm also gonna try and figure out if it's actually the same guy as the flat earther I banned from the channel for being a dick. So if it is the same guy, then I mean we're gonna close it soon because he's not allowed on here. Not because he's a flat earther, because he decided to insult everybody. And then when I said, all right, back it up or apologize, he was like, no, I don't care. So I was like, all right, well, I said in the email, I believe the exact quotation was, all right, I understand. You can F off then. That was my response. DM, well, I didn't say F. I typed out the full word. DM, current issues in Science Wing for $2 says, believe what the USGS tells you instead. Absolutely. The USGS would never lie to you. Also, the USGS does things like, surveys areas so they can figure out where their rock formations are, and they always get spherical excess in their triangles. Isn't that weird? What do you know? Is it Flat Earth Kyle, the Flat Earth No, Kyle, there's no way I'm going to let someone who's unironically enthusiastic about, the German, or the National Socialist German Workers' Party on my channel. Maybe Modern Day Debate can host him. Maybe they'll host him, because they seem to love hosting those guys. So
yeah, it's a freaking Nazi bar.
Yup. The feather is defined as filamentous, and they appear to be Sinosauropteryx. If a feather is defined as pennaceous, then it appears in Mataraptorans. The definition of feather changes everything, whether more like Prom 1999, who proposed and hypothesized that a feather evolved through a series of stages, or blah, blah, blah. McLean et al. Decontextualized my arguments and misunderstood my points. Did they, though? Because their understanding is almost identical to mine, and almost identical to Vishanti's, Dr. Duff's, who read that paper independently of either of us. Right? Like, we weren't consulting with him when we were reading this paper, nor was he with us when he read it. So this is what I get. It's what Dr. Duff got. It was what Vishanti got. It's what all of the authors in the response got. Why are so many people misunderstanding Dr. Haynes?
Yeah, really, this is turning into Richard Carrier territory. You just didn't read me. You just didn't understand it.
It's surprising that Haynes spares those who changed definition taxonomic groups in the article. Okay, the whole paragraph is taken out of context in my paper. This citation: in all scientific field endeavors, scientists do not understand everything, which is scientists also have fallible and finite minds. It's a weird phrase, but whatever. In this fallen world, yeah, jeez. I'm almost ready to take a drink for like random young Earth Christianese for no reason. Let's see. Talking about features we might not possibly understand. It's not talking about changes in definitions. The problem. Yeah, but you didn't define it. Like, the general thrust of this part of the response paper, right, is to say, hey, if we want to say that what counts as a bird are animals that have feathers, we need a definition for feather, but none was given. Does she provide a definition for feather here? No. The proper way to respond to this would be to address the things that she didn't do in the first paper, right? Hey, you didn't define this thing in your paper. Okay, so in your response to their reply, just define it. If you know what a feather is, you should be able to define it there, Dr. Haynes. Pillowpunk the Ape Istivus for $5 says, pelagic tunicates do a great job of not looking like disembodied internal organs. Okay. Alright, I'll give you that. Sure, I'll give you that. Instead, they look a whole lot like adult toys. Not sure that's a huge improvement. What?
Nothing.
Okay. McLean et al. Wait, was McLean the lead author? I thought the other guy was the lead author. Oh. Hey, if anyone could help me out and double check if McLean or Ross are the lead authors, because I could have sworn it was Ross who was listed first. So, but I'll accept it as McLean et al. It doesn't really matter. I just thought it was Ross. TM Current Issues in Science Wig says, you can't just define words. That's the thing, though. You can. Stipulative definitions for the sake of a particular argument are fine. It's completely okay. You can't always expect everyone to use your stipulative definitions in all contexts, but like for the purposes of an argument, a stipulative definition is often a very appropriate thing to do. Also, Savage Monkeyfish Cobra, member for 13 months and is at the amnio level, says, if Alan Fiducia is the Richard Carrier of vertebrate paleontology, what does that make Gabriella Haynes? Oh, the godless engineer. That's easy.
Oh, brutal.
Yeah.
Brutal.
The traditional assignments of some dinosaurs sporting feathers, as mentioned by McLean et al., has long been questioned. Again, by whom? Is it Alan Fiducia? You can just say Alan Fiducia if you want to. But again, this is another one of those like, hey, this is where you write a citation. This is also why you don't try to have someone respond on the day that the reply to their paper is published, because they don't have time to gather all the sources that they want to use, right? Because unlike in Wikipedia, where you can just have like a citation needed in the upper right, and then people just kind of know like, well, maybe it is true, maybe it's not, because this isn't an actual peer-reviewed journal, Wikipedia, it's not. Anyone can go on there. That's kind of okay for them, but when you're actually writing a paper and you want to say that other people agree with you, you have to be able to cite them. And she didn't, probably because she wrote this paper too fast and didn't have time to actually gather the citations that she wanted. Which means she probably shouldn't have been allowed to do this. Harry Bronson for $2 says, disembodied external organisms, if you will. Well, no, because the thing is, they don't look like the kind of adult toy that directly mimics a external organ.
Like what Nee just said, feathers. I knows it when I sees it.
I mean, that seems to be the definition she's going with. That's the thing. Let's see. Oh, by the way, had Godless Engineer not bothered to strawman me in the title to a video, I'd be much nicer about this. But like, dude, you made a strawman of of an entire video that wasn't even on my channel with me in the thumbnail. And it was a strawman.
Bad faith. Literally, neither of you said at any point of that stream, "Hey, we can prove that Jesus existed." At no point.
I can't prove Emperor Nero existed.
And I'm like, first of all, again, proof is for mathematics and alcohol. But second of all, they just didn't watch the stream. They think, oh, if there's only two choices, Jesus definitely existed or it was definitely mythicism. It's like, do you not understand that there's more than two options?
Yeah, as normal for someone with a history degree, I told my historical conclusions tentatively, and I go with the most likely option based on the evidence. Which is, not saying, yes, I can prove with 100% certainty that Jesus definitely exists, because I can't. I would never claim to be able to. What I can say, however, is that the evidence that he existed is stronger than the evidence that he didn't exist, because there is no evidence that he didn't exist. There's only evidence that he did.
Yeah, and it's just like, look, let's just pretend for a second that he did exist. Cool. That doesn't make every story about him true factually.
That's also true, yeah.
Like, I don't understand why people can't grasp that.
In fact, we know that no matter whether or not the Gospels are reliable, that there are stories that are told about Jesus that just didn't happen, right? Like, we know that. Even if all the canonical Gospels were reliable. For one, they contradict each other in a few places, so we know some of them had to be incorrect. And two, we know that there were, shortly after that, in the next few hundred years, additional Gospels based on even less likely reliable sources that just made up further stories. Like clay birds being turned into live birds. Like that, there's no good reason to think that ever happened, even if you accept Christianity. Now, I guess if you accept Islam, you might be required to accept that since it does make its way into the Quran, but hey, I guess that's what you get for writing an Arabic infancy gospel. It spreads around Arabia. Inkboy for €5 says, happy 250,000 of a days of certain person has been still better than a certain ministry synonymous with a package of sausages. Wow, that's a convoluted one, but I'll take a drink for it.
Yeah, really, that was a lot.
Thank you. All right, here we go. I was trying to look for a place to hit play. Like, no, this is a text document. I can't hit play on it. Also, whether some of them represent feathers, some scientists assign those animals to birds instead and consider them what they call feathers to be fibers. Yeah, so here's the thing, though. If you want to go with the Alan Fiducia, where basically all of Cerulurosauria ends up being birds, you have to explain how that works and why they don't have, or why they have all the features that dinosaurs have. while not being dinosaurs. Like, you have to actually do that work, right? And she doesn't. And she also doesn't give a definition of feathers. So still, she's persisting in an inability to define what a feather is while saying it's an important diagnostic criteria. Because even though she complained about them saying that apparently she treats feathers as like the necessary and sufficient cause for calling an animal a bird, she's no longer contesting that here, and she's still not giving a definition. By the way, we're not going to go through even close to all of this, because as you can see, this is pretty bad. So we're going to get into this section. In my paper, which again, this is a style choice. In formal academic writing, you should really avoid the first person pronouns. Just don't do it. Say this author or the author or something like that. It's weird and stuffy, but it's what you should do.
In my paper, blah blah blah, I followed the
it comes off as you're being full of yourself.
Yeah, it's also like that's part of the reason that you use we and our when you're writing a paper, even if you're doing it solo. It's like, remember that much from high school science.
Christopher Sanford for £5 says, given the lack of substance to this response, I have no real trouble believing Dr. Haynes put it together on the same day as reading McLean et al. Yeah, no, it does kind of read like her stream of consciousness response as she's reading this. Because look, basically the only things that she's citing are either her own paper, McLean's paper, or the things that are already in her works cited list for her original paper. Like, that's it. She's making claims about other scientists say without making any citations to that. So yeah, I do think that there's a reasonable possibility that is in fact what this is. Savage Monkeyfish Cobra for $5 says, mythicist logic. Mason Weems made up a lot of stuff about George Washington. Therefore, George Washington didn't exist. I mean, yeah, that is basically the mythicist logic.
For real.
Yeah. It's like, if a historian cannot say that the Gospels are reliable, which a historian can't say as a historian, right? You have to go farther than just the historical evidence in order to come to that conclusion. I'm not going to tell you not to. You can believe whatever you want about the Gospels. But from a historical standpoint, we cannot make the claim reasonably that they are historically reliable. But yeah, that doesn't make their central character made up. That's not how that works.
This thing about, like, yeah, Mason Weems making up stuff about George Washington, it's like, well, we even have, like, the apotheosis of George Washington in the freaking Capitol building, so...
Yeah, he's literally deified in there.
Literally, mythicists, you have 24 hours to respond.
Yeah, well, that's one of the things, that's one of the big criticism around not just Carrier, but like the few other mythicists out there, is that if you apply their standards to other historical, even very recent historical figures, you have to come to the conclusion that they're also mythical. Man, and so who was the first president of the United States? No one knows.
Right? Oh, God. You know what's funny is like the chat's talking about Nero and we're all just kind of riffing off each other. And then I thought about 30 coins, where they're like, oh, these are the 30 pieces of silver that Judas was paid.
And they're all late Nero coins?
Coins of Nero!
Yeah. And not just Nero, but like late in Nero's reign too, after he got fat.
Late in Nero's reign. And I'm like, wow. And I made a joke about time travel. And then later on in the episode, there was this reference to like similar themes. And I had to laugh. Just like, okay.
Yeah.
So there are time traveling Jews. Okay, cool.
Obviously.
You really do have that power.
Yeah, that's why you're gonna, in the far future, you're gonna travel back in time to get more spiritual advancements by going to Atlantis and fighting with the Martians. It all makes sense.
Raise your vibration already.
Goodness. Oh, spirit science, man.
Pain.
I love how he's just serious about all that. He's like, oh yeah, the Hebrews are from the future of space. Okay.
And all the explanations are true. Like, he'll come up with a completely different explanation for Atlantis, like one video later, and they're all somehow true at the same time. Like, bro, no.
Yeah, just don't worry about it. All right. So in my paper, I cite Amorim. The linear classification was based on similarities in creatures, but in contrast, Darwin's classification is based on their supposed ancestry. And I follow that by quoting, one could see that Dapper never changed because the animals and features have been the same. Well, okay, I guess kind of. Instead, the lens is used to interpret them change, but that's not really true, though. Because while the animals and their gross anatomical features might be the same, we've also gained things like the ability to look at genetics, right? Like, this is actually something Dr. Duff pointed out recently. If you were to just group, say, raptors and parrots, like we know that raptors and parrots, like eagles, hawks, vultures, parrots, all those, they form a group, right? It's a monophyletic group. And if you were to base all of your ideas on just morphology, you would probably put the hawks in with the eagles and the vultures, right? I mean, what is a hawk if it's not just a small eagle?
Except, what is a hawk if not eagles enduring?
But the thing is, when we check genetically, it turns out hawks are more closely related to parrots than they are to eagles. They've convergently evolved to look a lot more like eagles than they do look like parrots because of their niche. But yeah, genetically, it turns out they're more closely related to parrots. And parrots are probably the one that have had the most morphological change in order to adapt to very different niches than the other members of their group. So, yeah. Both paragraphs before and the ones... McLean writes 4 paragraphs disputing my arguments on Linnaean classification. However, my arguments would be better understood if they had read them in their context. So she's just accusing them of not reading the paper, which I don't agree with, because, again, we read the paper in context, and we came up with more or less the same conclusions that they did. That's what people who read this in context do.
The Richard Carrier thing.
Yep, it's also
if you misunderstand me, it's because you didn't read it, and if you did read it, you didn't understand it.
Mm-hmm. It's also the Nathaniel Jeanson tactic, right? He was in a debate with oh, now I don't remember who it was, but it was some geneticist, right? And he's in a debate with him, and the only response he has is, "Well, I don't think you read my book." It's like
just incomprehensible to them that you could possibly not come to the same conclusions.
Savage monkeyfish. Yeah, I think I was thinking of falcons. Sorry about that. Falcons, not hawks.
Whoops.
Hey.
Yeah, I love DM Wing. It just Jews in space.
Rocket ships.
Yes.
Okay. Never in my paper was it mentioned or implied or suggest that Linnaean classification is the correct one. Disagree. Hard disagree. That is what everyone took away from your paper. Linnaean classification should be the only one used for classifying organisms. I will say I do agree with Haynes there. I do think that Ross and McLean overstated their case there. Linnaean classification is biblical. I mean, I took you as endorsing it as at least Bible-based. I don't think that's quite the same as, like, you got it out of the Bible, right? Like, you open up the Bible and suddenly, like, Systema Naturae fell out. I don't think that's what your claim was, but it sounded like you were claiming it was based on the Bible. Linnaeus was correct in everything he did. Well, you didn't criticize anything he did. Like, you had an animal that, according to you, met the Linnaean classification for a bird, even though it didn't, and you neither pointed out that you neither gave Linnaeus' criteria, you didn't point out the problem with the teeth, you didn't call out Linnaeus as being incorrect about the teeth problem. Like, and then the number 5 just doesn't even make sense. Linnaeus was or was not influenced. What does that mean?
What? Was or was not influenced?
What? Like, was he or was he not influenced by alcohol, by evil atheists, by the Bible? Like,
future space Jews?
Yeah, future space Jews. Who knows? I'm sure he was influenced by things, though, because can you be a living human and not have any influences in your life? What would that be like?
If you do, I don't know how.
Yeah, I was just born into a featureless white void full of air, and that's been my entire life. Like, I'm uninfluenced by anything, because my entire life is in, like, the D&D 3.5 version of the astral plane. Oh, okay, I guess that could work. On the same matter, McLean et al. 2023, however, Linnaeus' entry for aves in the groundbreaking 10th edition noted that a defining feature of birds is that they're edentulate, lacking teeth. Yes, okay, fine, maybe she's going to address it here. Based on this, Archaeopteryx and numerous other fossil avians cannot be birds because they possess teeth. Yes, exactly. For example, Bihorn yeah, we read that. On page 12 of his original book in Latin, Linnaeus used these features, Edentulate, right there. There it is. That's the important bit. McLean et al. Did not mention the presence of feathers as a feature that Linnaeus used to define aves. Why would they? They don't disagree with you about that. You're in agreement about that. Like, I don't. What? So, why would they? I really don't get it. Why would they mention that when there's no disagreement? They're here to criticize you. I'm so confused. By the way, that's where we get in feathers. So using the same line of argumentation as McLean et al., Archaeopteryx should be a bird for presenting feathers. No, that's not their point. Oh my goodness. Their point is that when you cite Linnaeus as someone who would agree with you that Archaeopteryx was feathered, that you're not taking into account this bit. If they thought you weren't taking into account this bit, they would have mentioned it. But since you are taking it into account, they didn't mention it. They also didn't mention anything about, like, you know, the twin ventral heart or the breath that goes in and out of lungs, right? They didn't mention that either. They didn't talk about the 2 feet or the 2 wings. Emphasis mine. Why are you putting in an emphasis? Okay, sure, whatever.
Emphasis mine. I'm like, I don't really see any emphasis because it's all italicized.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the only way that you know.
She added an asterisk.
Yeah, every time there's an asterisk, that means that she's emphasizing it. And normally, if an entire text is italicized, like this is, because it's not in the same language as the main language, you like
unitalicize it, yeah.
Unitalicize or bold it. Yeah, unitalicize is ideal.
Yeah, or underline or something. Just
yeah.
So lazy.
Yes, Cadence Linker. Yes, it is falcons and not hawks, and I was wrong about that. Yep. Hey, do not be afraid to correct me on this show, because, like, I'm doing this live and I'm doing it with alcohol, so, like, I make mistakes.
Dapper corrects me all the time because I'm very not good at biology.
We're getting you there. We're getting you there. By the end of...
I mean, I'm slowly improving, and I did buy an AP biology book so I could fill in the gaps.
Nice.
I just can't do it off the cuff.
Very nice. McLean, so we're going to read a little bit more, respond a little more, and we're going to take a quick break. McLean et al. 2023 also state, Haynes sees classics as anti-biblical. Okay, it is therefore quite clear that employing Linnaeus systematics does not guarantee that one's methods, results are biblical. Yeah, this is one of those areas where I disagree with them. I don't think her claim was as strong as they're trying to make it. In a recent publication...
I like what Hypesci said in the chat. Falcons are tactical attack parrots.
I mean...
I agree.
Yeah, basically. In a recent publication, Gabriella Haynes argued that Archaeopteryx should be considered a bird rather than a dinosaur, that birds and dinosaurs are obviously distinct, and the statistical terminology is too influenced by evolutionary thinking to be of use to creationists, and the scientists should only use the name. Yeah, I mean, again, I don't agree with this last bit. I don't think that's a fair characterization that she thought only Linnaeus should be used, but she definitely put an emphasis on it. Amarim's 2002 citation in the context of the paragraph where it's inserted, blah, yeah, stop caring. All right, we're going to pick up with this next bit, right? Because again, this paper just goes on for pages and pages and pages. I mean, look where we are. We're up here with this little slider here. Yeah, like we're not even going to get close to finishing this. I just want to point out what a bad response this is and how long-winded it is, despite saying almost nothing. All right, so we're going to take a quick break. In the meantime, please enjoy the musical stylings of one Beethoven while my guest and I, or actually my co-host, you're not a guest here, you're a co-host. Sorry about that. Yeah. Guests are the kind of people I have on, like, every once in a while for, like, a show. You're here all the time. That makes you a co-host.
That's fair.
Yeah. So my co-host and I are going to take a quick break. And in the meantime, you can enjoy, Beethoven's music and maybe some commercials. Because, despite Pibblepunk's grievance, I can't hunt for all my food, so I gotta buy some of it. We are back. Welcome back, everybody. Thank you for all of you who stuck with me, which again is most of you. So, I want to give my quick midstream little talk here, which is to say that this channel is almost entirely supported directly through the support, primarily financial, of my viewers. Whether it be through Patreon, super chats, super thanks, super stickers, channel memberships, or anything like that. You guys really you've made this channel possible, right? You made it so that this is something that I can use to pay the bills, and I can focus on making the highest quality videos I can make, and even improving, right? Like, I think I've gotten better over time because I've had the time to dedicate to doing it. I couldn't do that if it were not for you guys supporting me. No, there is not currently Bilbo incoming. So, Vincent Sularito for $10 says, waiting to watch while I'm traveling from New Jersey to Connecticut to get some for Christmas. I love your work and appreciate everything you do. Thank you very much. Keep it up. Double D. Thank you very much, Vincent Sularito. Sorry. I really do appreciate it. And then Savage Monkeyfish Cobra just gifted 5 more memberships. We will get to those drinks after my little bit. But the memberships went to Border Barbecue, Carnival Frog, Nevets Kilu, Trippy Liquids, and Queen Necra II. Thank you very much. So yeah, it is very important that I have your support. And if you are currently not supporting, but you're interested in supporting, and you can afford it, because if you can't afford it, I want you to take care of yourself first, right? I don't want anyone to give me money that they don't have or can't afford. But assuming that you can afford it and you want to support, there are some great ways. The Patreon is probably one of the best ways. It starts at only $1 a month. It goes all the way to $100 a month if you're feeling especially generous. You can get a 15% discount if you go annual on that. So, if you want to get that $100 a month thing and then go annual, you can pay for, it'll be a little bit over $1,000, I think. Not suggesting that you do that. But no, actually, really what I'm saying is, you could get the $1 tier for less than $12 by going annual on that. And the memberships start at $1.99 a month. There is no annual thing, but those go all the way up to $20 a month. Both of them get you access to all my scripted videos early, which is just months and months worth of content right now. There's probably 5.5 months or something like that that's just available that you could just watch. I'm seeing 63 likes, Mark Smith. So I'm seeing 63 likes. I don't know. You might need to refresh. Yeah, so those are some of the best ways. If a annual or a monthly thing isn't something you want to do, there's also a merch store where there's stickers, there's t-shirts, blankets, pillows, towels, phone cases, baby onesies, whatever. Basically everything that Teespring makes except for leggings. And not because I don't want to sell leggings, but because I couldn't get the art that I'd made for merch to really look good on leggings. So there was always unfortunate placement no matter where I put the art. So
Dapper.
Yeah.
Here's a potential solution.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of putting the entire dinosaur on the leggings, why don't you make the dinosaur legs the leggings?
I don't know if I can, but that is a good idea. I do like that.
It's the only kind I got. Yeah.
I do like it.
Listen, you have me around half the time for shit posting, and I'm just like, I would wear dinosaur leggings.
I mean, it does sound cool. But then also, if you just want to, send me a little something to, help me pass the leisure time that I get a little bit easier. Or there are also a few things that just help out the channel. I have an Amazon wish list. It's full of mostly RPG books, but there's also some stuff like a monitor, a recording booth, because that would vastly boost my sound. Well, at least I think it would vastly boost my sound quality. I don't actually know for certain, but I believe it would. So yeah, those are a whole bunch of options. And if, of course, no matter what, if you want to support, especially if you can't afford any kind of support like I just mentioned, make sure you like this video and share it. I usually get fewer than 1% of my viewers share my videos. Now, of the 104 people watching right now, my guess is that all of you are more likely to share than average. But if I had to guess whether or not someone would share this stream from the people watching, I would guess that my chances are about 1 in 50 that someone would share. which, you know, I would like it to be a little higher than that. I'd like to get 2 or 3 shares out of this. So, yeah, please do share, please like, and we'll continue on. We're enough of all that nonsense. So we do have 5 drinks to make for the gifted membership. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay, here we go. A matter of definitions, or definition and cladistics. Probably should have had an S on the definition, but whatever. McLean used the word...
Yes, Vadim, 80s style aerobics, dinosaur leggings.
Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely. I should start my own Dapper Dinosaur 80s style workout video.
Oh my god, yes! Do it.
They did not explain if they were using that term based on the 1881 definition, which groups all known dinosaurs from the Triassic and the Carnivorous, dinosaurs from the Jurassic and the Cretaceous, which that would actually not get you far off from that. Or the 1986 definition that groups birds and all saurischians via cladistics. Well, first of all, she's just getting this wrong again. The 1986 definition does not group all saurischians into Theropoda. Theropoda is a subgroup of saurischians. I know I said we wouldn't be taking drinks for the creationist thing, but this is too stupid, and I have to take a drink for it. My goodness. Like, Gabriella Haynes, get the anything right about dinosaurs challenge. It's impossible.
Impossible.
Jeez. But yes, the 1986...
It's real painful.
The 1986 group would put birds in Theropoda, and since McLean et al. Were arguing that birds are theropod dinosaurs, that's part of the point that they're making, then you can just be assured that this is the one they mean, because it's the one that fits what you're talking about. Like...
Oh my god.
Haynes, did you... the only conclusion I can come to...
My brain hurt.
Yeah, it really does. The only conclusion I can come to is that she just is not aware of anything to do with dinosaurs. Plus, further, no one uses this definition anymore. No one. That's not how we define Theropoda anymore. Because that definition, which she's right about, basically all Triassic dinosaurs and then all carnivorous dinosaurs from the Jurassic and Cretaceous, yet no one thinks that that's what the Theropoda is anymore. I have not seen anyone, even Alan Fiducia, who would use this definition. Trail Mix for $5 says, my grievance to air is that past me forgot to get a present for the family gift exchange. Oops. Yeah, that's not ideal. Take a drink for that. But that also means it is time for me to pour this mango White Claw. Snarfoot, who's been a member for 14 months at the amniote level, says, Grievance, I was terminated last month. Counter Grievance, I was gifted membership. And of course, AIG is a collection of limp holy Godzilla. Well, first, I am very sorry to hear about you being terminated last month. That is never a fun time. And oddly enough, I feel like I've been hearing a lot of stories about people losing jobs right around now, which is like, really? Right around holiday season is when you're going to start terminating people? You couldn't hold off until, like, late January?
I mean, there's just never a good time, honestly.
There is never a good time, but there's, like, times when it's not like, oh, hey, I was hoping to get, like, my kids a present. Now I can't this year. Thanks, you ruined their holiday. I don't know.
I have slightly more, like, in-depth takes, but I am going to keep them to myself.
Well, look, I do too, but we're not here to talk about, like, economics and, like, the ethics of employment. Yeah. So, you know.
And Jimmy, I know. That's why I'm like, nope, I'm just going to zip that right up so we can get back to this ridiculous paper response.
Well, when I say holidays and gifts, I just basically mean December as a whole. Like, yeah. I'm putting Hanukkah in there, Kwanzaa. Hey, you know what? If one of the Eids happens to fit into December this year, then too.
If you really wait long enough, it will.
I mean, yeah. Actually, I did find it amusing because, like, it happened in, like, the late 2010s that I think it was Eid al-Fitr fell into December. And then for, like, 3 years later, you would still see people in, like, town halls and whatnot trying to put up, like, Happy Eid. And it was like, guys, it's... It's gone now. It's not happening anymore.
Yeah, really.
And like they just had absolutely no concept of the idea that the religious calendar in Islam is on it's on a lunar calendar, and it doesn't have the same number of days.
They don't add leap months.
No, they don't. The thing is, though, that Arabs used to add leap months, and one of the curious things, one of the reasons why, like, I actually think that, like, I'm not a Muhammad mythicist, but I think they actually have a few good points. There's no stories about Muhammad doing anything during a leap month, and we know that they were observed during the time that he's supposed to have been alive. So it's like,
yeah,
that's not a bad argument. It's not a good argument, but like, it's not a bad one either.
Yeah. There are worse arguments, but.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's more likely that the stories that were put into leap months were just shoved onto other months, but by people who were like, well, I don't know what month that is, so I'll just say it was this month instead. That seems more likely to me, because I do think Muhammad existed. And I don't think that he did all the things that we hear about in biographical literature about him. Anyway.
Wait, you're telling me some stories might have been exaggerated, and there's like a whole religion based off some of those exaggerated stories? I can't believe.
Impossible.
You must think you just proved that Muhammad existed.
Yeah, definitely. Now, you know who definitely didn't exist, though? The Bob. That's where I'm going to put my stance. Sorry, Bobists.
Okay, that's where you're drawing the line?
Get out of here, Rainn Wilson. There's no Bob.
Oh my God.
No one in chat even knows what we're talking about anymore. We went to Bobism. It's like the most obscure nonsense. Vadim Slavovsky Radchenko, member for 7 months, is at the amulet level, says, why do you scientists keep wasting time with dinosaurs when you can't even classify all the Pokemon? But now he's surrounded you with both Christmas trees and pelagic tunicates. You better watch out.
And look at me. The expression on that little emoji face is, oh my God, there's Christmas trees, I'm trapped. But that's okay, because the tunicates are coming in to assist me.
Yes, obviously. They're going to float by serenely.
Unlike sessile tunicates, they can move around and come to my aid. The Christmas trees are lit. Vishanti calls for aid.
Steve Areno, who's been a member for 14 months, says, I don't like your pelagic tunicate attitude, Dapper. That's fair. I mean, it's fair. It might not be likable.
I'm with you, Steve Areno.
And humans evolved from Happy Rocks Gladstone for $10 says, my grievance is AIG is a big bag of Kent Hovind's counter grievance. Oh, sorry, Kent Hovind. There you go. Counter grievance. Finding creative ways of writing AIG is a bag of Kent Hovind. Yes.
Yeah.
It can be fun. We'll take a drink.
Says, man, I just sit and work on my coloring program all Dapper and Vishanti go on about things. That's fine.
Well, I'm glad that's enjoyable. Yeah, the Bob is a sort of like non-mainstream figure in the history of Islam in like the early modern period. And he definitely existed. We've got photographs of him.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah. I was just being absurdist by saying that that's where my line in the sand is. There was no Bob. So it's necessary to point out one of the main points of my paper. Terms and definitions must be clear, especially the term theropod, which has been changed and influenced by evolutionary ideas and had its definition changed. Okay, here's the thing, though. When they use the definition, you can't tell me in good faith that you think that they might be using this one. Because part of the argument from Ross and McLean is that birds fit into the group of dinosaurs called theropods, right? And that theropod is a group of animals like mammals, right? That does not represent what they think of as a created kind. Because remember, Ross and McLean, they're creationists. They're young Earth creationists specifically. That's why they're allowed to publish in the ARJ, even though they're at odds with a lot of the stuff that Answers in Genesis says. They're not at odds with the basics of young Earth creationism, so they're allowed to publish here. And they're using theropod the same way that they would use mammal. Like, they don't think that whales have a common ancestry with hippos. They don't think that. But they recognize them as both being at least mammals. I don't know if McLean and Ross would recognize whales as being artiodactyls, which they are. But, like, by saying you're not sure which definition they're using, when they clearly are using this one, or at least a modified version of it, you're just lying, Haynes. Or you just don't know what you're talking about. We're going to skip a bit. Clitistics. Okay. Sorry, I'm skipping around a bit because, like I said, this paper is insanely long, and I'm just giving an overview just to show how bad a response this is. If you want to actually read it yourselves, I will put it in the chat. So that is a link that would take you to the actual paper right there. And yeah, I'm going to pin that for now. So yeah, if you want to follow along or read it later in all of its glory, feel free. I don't want to, because geez. One of the issues McLean et al. 2023 raised in their arguments about my baromenological analysis. So I understand all of us should consider some points. Oh, ponder/consider, huh? There's more of that wonderful formal English. And here's the thing, right? English is not Gabriella Haynes' first language. So I am willing to forgive a lot of her poor use of English in this. However, what I'm going to point out is that Answers Research Journal has a editorial staff, and it's headed up by Andrew Snelling. Sorry. Do a better job when it comes to your authors who don't have English as a first language. You need to give them support for this kind of thing because they're not used to writing in this language. What, you think I could write formal Spanish without problems? No, I would need help. And if someone wanted me to publish something I composed in Spanish in their publication, I would hope they would give me the support I need to make my Spanish actually read well.
Dude, I'm reasonably fluent in Spanish, and I could not do that.
Yeah, I mean, if you wanted to write a formal,
substantial grammatical support.
And not just grammatical support, but just style guidelines, right? Like, you don't know what style considerations are important for formal academic Spanish, and I don't either. And like, this really is just a criticism of Answers Genesis. Give more support to your writers who aren't native English speakers. They obviously need it. Because, I mean, look at Gabriella Haynes' writing, which I'm not criticizing her for. She's way better at English than I am at Portuguese, or Spanish for that matter. Vandalia for $5 says, Dapper, you might dislike pelagic tunicates. Just make sure you don't become bigoted against them. They are still a chordate, just like you, deep down. I mean, I'm not disputing that they're chordates, right, but there's a lot of chordates that I don't like. I don't know if you've noticed. There's a lot of chordates much more closely related to me than pelagic tunicates that I don't like. Like, you know, Andrew Snelling.
Yeah.
Way more closely related to a dinosaur than he is to a pelagic tunicate. Still don't like him.
Andrew Snelling, the most honest man in the world.
Oh, was it opposite day today? I didn't get the memo. Characters used in baromenological analyses are selected by secular scientists with an evolutionary bias. That's not true, right? When people are doing baromenological studies, they can opt to use existing evolutionary data sets. But actually, one of the criticisms that Gutsa Gibb and Erica had of the baromenological analysis that Wood ran with Peter from Paleologos that was published in Answers Research Journal was that their use of character sets seemed strange to her, and that they were accepting as like baromenologically significant character traits that are known to just widely vary even among very similar primates, and that just don't seem like appropriate for use in this context, and things like that. And like, that was one of her criticisms, is that they were not using a set of character traits that would make sense to most people who are in the field. So, like, this is just wrong. Like, that's not what's happening. Mark A. Smith for $10 says, my grievance is that hateful transphobes can bully a good YouTuber to quit making content and use a cutesy innocent video as their base target. Live well, Joe Cat. That is unfortunate. That is not something I was familiar with. Yeah.
Here's my counter grievance. That a YouTuber can take down a bunch of plagiarists, especially one grifting off of the queer community by stealing dozens of other queer authors' writing and passing it off uncritically as his own.
Also,
and the original thoughts he has are misogynist. So
yeah, I'm gonna take a drink for that grievance too, even though you didn't super chat it. But that's okay because you're a co-host.
That's right.
Jessica, who's been a member for 10 months, says bag plus eggplant equals AIG. And we'll take a drink for that. I like that one. Correct.
That math checks out.
Yeah, that plagiarism video. My goodness. In fact, even when it was just on the Illuminati section, and I was like, geez, this is way worse than I thought it was. Because I was aware of some of that.
Oh, yeah.
But I didn't realize just how deep that went with her. And I was just like, yikes.
Oh, yeah. I've been following along with it. And I was like, yo, this is brutal. This is brutal. Like,
Yeah.
Bomber Guy, you're like a third of the way through the video, and he's like, yeah, but that's not what this is really about. That's just the intro. You're like, oh god.
That's okay.
He's literally just coming out of hiding to ether somebody. Like,
another YouTuber I watch sometimes put out a 13-hour video that was labeled part 1 of 3.
Yeah.
So no, it wasn't even Agmashwa.
Oh my god, no, because his was 26 hours. Mubby.
Yeah, he went through 26 hours of footage. I don't think it's going to end up being full 26 hours. I guess I could ask him, but
I mean, that's what his community post said, but yeah, okay.
Maybe I misunderstood.
Oh, okay.
They choose their characters, their weight, state, coding, definition, meaning, and importance for analysis, propose it in its purpose. That's the thing, though. They don't weight them the same, right? One of the criticisms, again, of that Baraminology paper for, I think it was Homo naledi, and putting that into the human category as opposed to the ape category, like Answers in Genesis would like. Or maybe it was Australopithecus gargi. I don't remember exactly which taxon it was that they disagreed with the Answers in Genesis with. They said that this particular taxon was a human and not an ape, and Answers in Genesis disagrees. So whatever. I don't remember exactly which taxon it is. I would have to double check. But one of the criticisms that Erica had in their paper was that they basically just didn't weight things. So they certainly did not weight them the same way that scientists do. Savage Monkey Fish Cobra for $5 says, AIG is an enormous envelope encompassing 11 examples of elephantine erotic equipment publishing under SAT's edited journal. Wow, thank you. And yes, that's all true, and we'll take a drink. They go on cite Wiley, characters are often chosen to fit the purpose of the study at hand. Which, I mean, it's hard to imagine how you could do otherwise. Which leads to different character types often produce discordant phylogenies. Yeah, that happens, right? And the question then is, okay, so how do we do an analysis with possibly fuller data sets, maybe more taxa, and, you know, we come up with competing hypotheses, right? A phylogeny is a hypothesis, right? You're saying, this is, I think, what the correct pattern of ancestry is in this group. And then other people make competing hypotheses, and then you test them against each other and against new data. That's how science works. This is just a why is science complaint. What a character is and its measuring is in an evolutionary worldview makes the data evolutionary bias. But it doesn't, though, right? If I'm like, okay, the length of the femur is less than 80% of the length of the humerus, that's not an evolutionary worldview. That's just a measurement. Cat T, who's been a member for 2 months and at the annual level, says, AIG are a carrier of returns.
Amazing!
Wow.
That's it. That's the winner.
Yeah,
right
we're
there.
taking a drink for that. Goodness.
That's the winner.
Goop23 for $2 says,
Bomber Guy video has 11 million views right now. Holy crap.
Ooh, good for him.
Woo!
And bad for that guy that he was calling out. Jeez. Goop23 for $2 says, H Bomber Guy coming out of his well to shame mankind. Yeah, basically. The part, when I was watching that, the part that really got me the most is when the guy was talking about the erasure of LGBTQ voices. And he was plagiarizing that from someone else, thereby erasing that guy's voice. And I was like,
yeah.
God damn, dude.
Yeah.
Like, of all the things that maybe you should give credit for, maybe that one right there. Maybe you give that credit. Yeah. Because the thing is, it's a real concern, right? There is a long history of LGBTQ erasure.
Yeah.
Maybe don't participate it while trying to decry it. I don't know. Maybe that's a bar that's too high.
The thing that really got me, in addition to that, again, it was like, oh, the only original things that he contributes are the misogyny. And I'm just like, okay, thanks, buddy. I'm glad that your entire existence is getting ethered.
Characters are defined as either evolutionary, stable, or volatile, depending on whether they change with time or not, and as either ancestral or derived, depending on which is assumed to have appeared first. Yeah, but the thing is that you agree with that as a thing that happens, right? Because that's what... The thing is, creationists like to complain about evolution and evolutionary assumptions, but the thing is they accept all of them.
Yeah.
They believe in...
Even on the video I was watching that you just put out this week on the Catholic Young Earth Creationist, she was saying outright, like, well, we know small changes happen. And I'm like, what do you think evolution is.
Yeah, it's just a lot of those.
It's a bunch of little tiny changes, but over a very long period of time.
Yeah, doesn't matter. With one breath, they'll say that anything to do with evolution is complete nonsense, and on the other hand, they'll just accept virtually all of evolution in order to argue why there's not too many animals to fit on the ark. Okay. As an example of some of the problems with the character sample, yeah, okay, blah, blah, blah. She's just complaining about this. McLean says, Haynes is correct to point out that cladistics was developed as a purely evolutionary taxonomic system that assumes universal common descent. Yes, that is true. That she's right about that. They're right about that. Everyone accepts that. However, it is an overreach to claim that due to its origins in evolutionary studies, cladistics is always invariably unbiblical. Well, I mean, yeah, that would be the genetic fallacy, right? So, but also, it's still weird to me that people are like, well, this science isn't biblical. Like, I don't know. It's like complaining that this science isn't sour enough. Like, what?
Well, you know what else isn't biblical? Calculus.
Yeah. Go find me some calculus in the Bible.
And?
Yeah, it's just so weird to me. Like, I don't even know what it would mean for science to be biblical.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Like, if you showed me something and you could make a good case that it's biblical, I feel like by that reason it would kind of remove it from the realm of science. Not because the Bible has to be unscientific, but because the idea of science is all about empiricism. And the Bible is not an empirical work, right? It's not citing data tables. Yeah, most literature isn't empirical. Right. It was written before empiricism was even really invented. So, yeah, I don't... Yeah. Anyway, after what has been demonstrated above, I understand it is not an overreach. Okay. It is just the reality of things.
All right, man.
Yeah. An evolutionary influence is in the... So the thing that you would do, right, if you wanted to negate this, is what you would do is you would collect your own character sets, right? You would do the work. And then you would show, see, without using the evolutionary assumptions, and using these character sets that I think are important for these reasons that I base on the Bible, then you would come out with why the Bible says that these are important characteristics. And then you would go into a discussion about why that data set is now not biased because of evolutionary origins, and show why when you apply it to organisms, not only do you get a better resolution on what things are and are not in the same kind, but that you can now make new predictions about kind boundaries that you couldn't before, and that will come true. Of course, the big problem is that it's not going to work. That's, of course, the big problem, right? Because you're not actually going to be able to get all of these biblical things into your weighting. So, yeah. It's always frustrating because the things that should be done to demonstrate the hypotheses that young Earth creationists put forward are usually pretty obvious, right? Like when they say, okay, I think biogenic limestone can be laid down hundreds of feet per day. The response is, okay, well, hey, there's lots of flumes out there. Get yourself some time at a flume, put in some crushed up biogenic lime, and see how fast you can get it to deposit. And then see if you can get it to deposit in a way that matches the deposition in situ in nature. Go have fun. But they're never going to do that because they all know deep down somewhere, at least all the pros do, that if they were actually to do the experiments that would reasonably test their hypotheses, they're going to come up as defeating the hypothesis and supporting the null hypothesis. Like, that's what they all know. Pillowpunk for $5 says, coccolithophores are tiny, but the pyramids are huge. Therefore, the pyramids could not be made of limestone. Checkmate, evolutionists. I mean...
Savage Cobra says, Australia is not in the Protestant Bible, therefore Ken Ham is unbiblical, therefore AIG is unbiblical.
There you go. I mean, I don't think it's in any Bibles, never mind just the Protestant Bible, but yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's an Australia in the Apocrypha somewhere.
I mean, not in the Catholic or Orthodox Apocrypha. Maybe in, like, the extra books that the Ethiopians have, because they've got an even wider canon.
Yeah, maybe it's in Ethiopian Talmud canon.
Yeah, somewhere in, like, 4th Enoch or something.
Yes.
I don't even remember how many Enochs they have in their canon, but it's more than 2.
I think it's 3.
Okay, maybe it's 3. Look, I have not read all the books in the Ethiopian canon. Not to throw shade on the Ethiopian Tewahedo Orthodox Church. I don't know enough about them to throw shade on them, although I do know that they made some of the best churches ever. Those monolithic churches, which are absolutely amazing, and I would love to see someday. Anyway, McLean and all say that I bring strong accusations, yet Haynes is not. Look, man, if you're going to start with the first person, like, put some brackets here, like around Haynes does, and put, like, I do. Right? Like, keep the person the same across your entire sentence. Anyway, does not provide a single example of erroneous observations, coding errors, blah, blah, blah. Which is true, she doesn't. I released 5 paragraphs with citations and 2 diagrams demonstrating the wrong conclusions from published morphological data set. Yeah, but you didn't say why, how they were errors, or what you would do better. You just said, I disagree with the conclusions, therefore the data sets were produced incorrectly. That's not how that works, right? That's affirming the consequent. You're saying, I disagree, therefore because it's wrong, they must have done the checks wrong. That's not how this works, right? You can't just say, oh, well, because I come to a different conclusion, they must have done it wrong. You have to show that. Now, if all you're doing is just, reading this at home for your own edification, sure, you can do that. You can be like, well, I don't think that's a valid conclusion, so they probably did it wrong. And you can just go with that as your own personal conclusion. But if you want to argue that in a piece of academic, or at least play-acted academic literature, you have to tell people your reasoning. You have to actually show what they got wrong and why, when you do it the right way, you get the conclusion that you actually do support. Vadim Samovsky-Redchenko says, do they have reboots of Enoch too? No, what actually happens is that after First Enoch, there's other books that have similar themes and deal with similar characters, but really shouldn't just be called Enoch. But they are because of the connection and themes. And so calling them second and third Enoch is really, it's kind of a dumb thing people have decided to do since they were written, like long since. And yeah, I wish they had different names as like their common name in academia, but they don't. So, oh well. But First Enoch is basically a reboot of Genesis, like Genesis 1 through 7 or something.
It's the fanfic version.
Yeah,
expanded
basically.
Lore.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of lore that could be expanded. It's like when you read into the Star Wars lore, and it turns out that every single alien that you see in the cantina scene in the original Star Wars, oh no, they all have lives and full biographies and their own set of books and whatnot. It's like, you think that's just a random Wolfman that they took because they had a Wolfman costume hanging out? No, that's actually a well thought out character. You just don't know. Every single member of the band, yeah, got a name, got a whole biography, whole life full of exciting events.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Which actually, if you go to the wiki that does extended lore for Star Wars, you can literally read about every single character that shows up, even in passing.
I used to date somebody that knew every single freaking detail of every random background actor.
That must have been amazing.
It was incredibly tedious.
Hivesci for $2 says, the need to Enoch it off. Enoch it off. I get it. Very nice. They need to Enoch it off. Yep. Nope. Good stuff right there. Okay. McLean also raises some issues about my arguments again with the first person regarding classistics. They say, after all, classistics is simply a method of hierarchically arranging organisms, which, I mean, it is. Individual species, genera, and so on, by plotting them on trees based on the proportions of how similar their characteristics are. Emphasis mine. And actually, I believe last week I took some umbrage with their use of similar there, because it also takes into account the differences and also things like there's different ways to analyze the data set. Like there's neighbor joining, there's Boolean inference, there's using fewest steps. Like there's multiple ways of doing this, and it's not all just based on how similar two things are. So, concerning their statement, I find the wording they use for their explanation of what classistics is appealing. No one cares what appeals to you. This is supposed to be a scientific paper, Haynes. You're not supposed to be talking about what you like. Here I would like to break it apart and make some observations. I also provided some secular citations that seem to invalidate the statement made by McLean et al. Also, the use of the word secular here is just weird. Like secular citations. You should care if the citations are good work. You shouldn't, generally speaking, you should not know the religious affiliation or opinions or anything of the author of a paper. Right? You just shouldn't know.
And you know why? It's not because you're an evil religious evolutionist. It's because it's not relevant to your work.
Yep. It's just like you probably shouldn't know how many kids the authors have, or what their sexual orientation is, or any of those things, right? They're just not relevant, right? You don't need to know how old they are. You need to know what's in the paper. So, yeah. Jillian and the entire column is igneous says, genuinely love Tales from Mos Eisley Cantina. Look, I'm not saying it's not fun to do all that. I'm just saying, like, clearly that's not anything that George Lucas had in mind. Similar to how, like, the stuff in, First Enoch is nothing at all approaching what the authors of Genesis had in mind. Sam, suborbital platypus, Talbert, member for 14 months of that Daniel level, says, happy Festivus, may your grievances be few, and your feats of strength impressive. Thank you very much. I do appreciate that. And yes, I agree. But again, feel free to air those grievances, because this is the best time to air your grievances. Because presumably you have a lot of problems with a whole lot of people, and we need to hear about them. So, in fact, the model of phylogenetics connecting species materially opposes not only to a creationist view, in a sense, the literal interpretation of Genesis. You can see that's a problem for you, right? Because you need phylogenies within created kinds. The entire position of Answers in Genesis is that phylogenies are valid, but only within the created kinds. That means that you can't simply ignore common ancestry among the organisms that you're testing. Of course, the problem is that when you allow too much allowance for common ancestry and you test enough creatures, oh no, you can't draw a line anywhere to say where the kinds are.
Oh no.
It's like creationists are trying to, have their cake and eat it too. By proposing these phylogeny that connect species, we move from models in which species are watertight entities, immutable and disconnected from each other, to a model in which not only species, but also their characteristics are historically connected. Which is still your position, Haynes. That's what you think. A phylogenetic relationship of varying degrees exists between all living species, irrespective of whether we know it or not. The aim of research on phylogenetic systematics is to discover the appropriate degrees of phylogenetic relationship within a given group. So this is the first one that, like, yes, you don't agree with that. But what you should do is you should say, well, since I agree with this, that means I agree with the basics of phylogeny, but I should be able to use phylogenetics to find the boundaries, because where there are two different created kinds, I should be able to get consensus phylogenies within the kind, but I shouldn't be able to get consensus phylogenies between kinds. But you know what? You can. That's the problem. You take any set of groups that creationists have identified as separate kinds, and you run a phylogenetic analysis, including as many organisms as you can, and you find that there are consensus trees at higher levels. So, yeah. Since the advent of the theory of evolution, one of the tests of biology... Okay, I got tired of reading this section. Just whining about this while being a hypocrite. So we're going to scroll down a bit. I want to cover a fair few sections of this, right? Oh my goodness, how long is this section?
Holy moly.
Yeah, about Dinosauria. Yeah, something she didn't bother to define. Let's see. DM Kurt Issues in Science Wing says, what's the biblical verse, the holiday Star Wars special? I don't think the holiday Star Wars special was biblical. I don't think it tried to be. I mean, it was only even vaguely Christmassy. So I'm not sure what you're asking. Tag me if you want, if you have like a clarification, because I'm not. I feel like maybe I'm misunderstanding the verse / bit in there. Leonard Peterson for $2 says grievance.
Biblical versus the Star Wars holiday special.
Yeah, I don't know what that means. I mean, all I can say is I don't think there was ever an attempt to make the Star Wars holiday special biblical. Yeah, I don't know. Linda Peterson for $2 says grievance, young earth creationism is a thing in the 21st century. Yeah, that's a fair grievance. Yeah, I'll take a drink for that. But then again, so is flat earth, so what do you know?
Yeah.
What's the biblical version of the Star Wars holiday special? I mean, there isn't one. There's, as far as I can tell, there's nothing biblical in the entire Star Wars holiday
he's
special.
trying to prompt you to riff off of that, but I've got nothing because my brain is slowly frying.
Yeah, I mean, it's a story about Chewie not making it home, or probably not making it home in time for Life Day, which is a Wookiee holiday. I mean, maybe you could make a connection to that and like Joseph and Mary going to Bethlehem? Maybe? Yeah, I got nothing. I'm sorry. I don't know. Yeah. Anyway. McLean et al. Bring a definition. The authors wrote, Dinosauria is an Archosaurian group characterized by a variety of skeletal traits, and then they go through the ones that we went through. So we're going to get to hers. The issue raised by the authors is confusing to me for the reasons listed below. You know what? I'm sure it is confusing to you, Gabriella Haynes. Because by all evidence, you have never once in your life actually studied what dinosaurs are. Like, everything about your original paper indicates to be that you do not understand the very basics of dinosaur anatomy, cladistics, phylogenies, any of those things. Even if you want to oppose them, you just don't understand them in the first place. So I'm not at all surprised that they're confusing you. When the authors describe Dinosauria as an Archosaurian group, I understand the definition of the term Archosaurian they are using needs to be explained because the definition of Archosauria was changed by Gauthier in 1986. The change has been applied since then. Gauthier in 1986 writes, Archosauria is redefined to encompass all descendants of the most recent common ancestor crocodiles and birds. Okay, Gauthier 1986 explains the reasons for the new definition. Yeah, okay, so here's the thing, right? If you don't think that these authors think that the definition of Archosaur should appropriately be defined in terms of a phylogenetic definition, then yeah, sure, maybe they should cite the older definition, but clearly that's not what they're using. They're using the character-based definition of Archosaurs because they don't think that Archosauria is within a single kind. They don't think that. It's frustrating. Nesbitt follows Gauthier and Padian's and Gauthier's definition. Nesbitt writes at the first 3 lines of the introduction of the paper. And also, suppose the authors are using the understanding of Archosauria followed by Nesbitt, who allows Gauthier, blah, blah, blah. Thus, it is legitimate to use an evolutionary-based understanding of Archosauria in a creationist discussion. No, but you haven't said that they are using that, right? You know that that's not what they're doing. You're trying to say, my paper is okay with its complete lack of definitions, with its very open-endedness, because these authors use some already pretty well-defined in terms of character state-based definitions terms, which also have phylogenetic-based definitions. And I don't know which one they're using. It recovers the same set of animals either way, right? If you want to say that what Archosauria is, it's the group of animals that contain the most recent common ancestor of Crocodilia and Aves, and all of their descendants, you get the same group of animals when you define it in the traditional character-based way, like the presence of the anterorbital fenestra, the presence of a fourth trochanter in the femur, the presence of a caudofemoralis longus muscle, the hind leg-driven locomotion. Like, when you combine all those things, you get the same set of animals. So it ultimately actually doesn't even matter, because more or less, the two sets of definitions, the character-based one and the phylogenetic one, come out to be the same group. So who cares which one they're using? And besides, which one they're using, because they're not real scientists. They're younger LARPers. So they're using the definition that would be okay to your LARP group.
Yeah.
The other point is that they're using an understanding of Archosauria different from Nesbitt, then using features for Dinosauria. Are they using a different definition? I mean, he's probably using a phylogenetic one. So, I mean, their definition would differ in that they don't accept the reality of the phylogeny that Nesbitt would probably accept. So, I mean, there is that difference, but it still recovers the same group of animals.
Man, I wish I could just, reject the entire work of a field and still call myself a scientist.
Yeah, with a scientist within that field.
Yeah, a scientist within that field, yeah.
Yeah, it's a little crazy. Nesbitt is logically inconsistent because Archosauria and Dinosauria are seen as phylogenetically related, but by that author. In this case, McLean et al. 2023 will be using the same term and Archosauria. Okay, so here's the thing. Even if you don't like their use of Archosauria, which fair enough, I mean, you can complain about it. it doesn't change the fact that they have definitions that they can use for dinosaurs that were character-based. That's what they gave up here. Right? When they do this is their, right, 2011, Nesbitt, while accepting the phylogeny, also gives a character-based definition. And I mean, they identify more than just this, right? Nesbitt identifies, total 12. So this is slightly less than half of that group. They're pretty clear that, right here, characterized by a variety of skeletal traits possessed by its members. So they are clearly relying on the Nesbitt 2011 character-based definition for Dinosauria, and they don't care whether or not he also accepts this to be a monophyletic clade, which you don't accept, and they don't accept either. So all this whining about Nesbitt accepting a phylogenetic definition doesn't matter, because they're specifically citing his character-based criteria for determining whether or not a paleotaxon happens, or, well, any taxon, is a dinosaur. So talk about that. Why don't you have a character-based definition for dinosaurs if you're trying to argue that birds aren't dinosaurs? Instead, no, she's just going to whine about whether or not Nesbitt believes in evolution.
Man, so many of these creationist papers, quote unquote, and arguments, they want to LARP real scientists so bad, but all of their stuff comes across as if they're going, ah, yes, but have you considered? Nuh-uh.
Basically. Broussard et al. About Archosaurus state, Crown group Archosauri, which includes birds, dinosaurs, crocodilomorphs, and several extinct Mesozoic groups, is primary division in the vertebrate tree of life. The evolutionary bias is present in the background from where yeah, we all know. But again, do you have a character-based definition that you think is better than the one that McLean et al. Are relying on? Do you, Haynes? Because if you do, this would be a great opportunity for you to provide it. But you don't. That's the thing. We all know you don't, because you clearly don't know the first thing about the anatomy of dinosaurs, based on everything that you talked about in your paper, which was laughably bad at both bird and general dinosaur anatomy. So come up with your own definition. They at least provided a source that you could look up to find a character-based definition, even if the author also believes something that you don't accept, and that you know that the people responding to you don't accept. Just do the work. That's one of the things that frustrates me the most about creationists, is they just refuse to do the work. And I get it. They know that it won't go their way if they do. And it won't. That's true. But that doesn't excuse you from doing it. It's the same thing with flat earthers, right? Like, oh, hey, you want to do a laser test over a lake? Okay, we'll get the lapse rate. Oh, wait, you didn't get the lapse rate, so we have no idea how much refraction there is, so we actually don't know what the prediction based on the globe or the flat earth is? Well, I guess that's a problem. It's like, yeah, but it's hard to get the lapse rate. And?
Welcome to science!
Yeah, my favorite one, though, was when someone said, well, I got the lapse rate by checking the temperature. And the question was then asked, well, how did you check the temperature? And the answer was, I used the app on my phone.
Oh my god.
It's like, okay, so your phone accesses the nearest weather station that's hooked up into its network. It doesn't physically have a thermometer. It doesn't know what temperature it is directly around the phone. It just taps into a weather network with monitoring stations that have the... It was like, yeah, it was the same temperature the whole way. It's like, oh my god, dude.
They don't understand or care that microclimates exist, or that a weather station could be miles away and the temperature be different. Like, if you're at a different elevation, the temperature is different. Not to mention whether you're near a body of water and all this other stuff going on. Goodness.
Thus, any of the three possibilities for using Nesbitt features for Dinosauria are problematic. Yet the thing is, though, you haven't given a definition that you could use, and they gave a definition that includes character-based stuff that you could accept. Do you have an objection to the characters, the 12 characters that he lists, or even just the 5 that they particularly call out? Which wouldn't be the same ones I would call out, because they're not the most easy for most people to understand, but I recognize that their audience isn't the same as mine. But, like, do you have a better set of characteristics, Haynes, that you could use? No, you're just going to complain that all the sources that they have for their definition of dinosaurs are people who are scientists and therefore shouldn't be trusted. Because that's what this comes down to, right? When she says, oh, these scientists' work has been influenced by evolutionary science, that's just her saying, you shouldn't trust what scientists write about science. You should only trust what non-scientists write about science. Because remember, she's not a scientist. If she were, she'd be doing science.
And these are the same people who are like, I don't understand why people won't get vaccinated. Well, gee, miss, they're influenced by evolutionary science telling people not to trust science and then getting confused when their own people don't trust science. Like,
Yeah, how could this have happened that we have so many anti-vaxxers among our audience? I don't know,
I
man.
can't believe.
Hard to figure out when you've been spending your entire life as an organization telling people that scientists are actually liars, in fact. All right, though.
Actively catering to the anti-authoritarian. You can't tell me what to do. Guns and Jesus. America.
Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to scroll down and see if we actually get a definition from her of, let's see, of Dinosauria, rather than just her complaining that she doesn't like who they used as their person to define it. Nope, this is just more complaining. Okay, definitions. Does she get a definition? In this chapter of the book, Dinosaur, Michael Benton, 2,000 words. There have also been important developments in blah, blah, blah. Nope, not given a definition yet. Their point is defined ostensibly to include birds and other saurischians. No, she doesn't give a definition. And then she just complains about using the 2014 dataset from Broussard et al. Okay, that's great. So yeah, no, she doesn't bother to give definition. Also, she hasn't defined feather either, right? One of the things they call her out for is not defining feather, despite using it as... She doesn't bother with that either. So yeah, this is just a bunch of waffle, and we spent 2 hours on it, and then, yeah, we're in, like, the citations in the appendix section. So, this is what passes as scholarship at the Answers Research Journal. Like, when I say they obviously don't actually have real peer review, this is my evidence for that. It's things like this. The fact that this got published, that does not address any of the problems. Well, okay, it addresses a few of the problems, but they're relatively minor ones, like the fact that I think McLean et al. Overstates her the weight that she gives Linnaeus. Okay, sure. But that's a pretty minor point of their entire paper.
Yeah.
And then the rest of it is just whining that she doesn't like their sources without herself providing better sources, or even just doing her own work to provide what those sources provide, but from her own perspective. She doesn't do any of that. She just complains that, like, well, their tone was bad, and they listened to scientists.
Oh, no.
Okay. None of this helps us with any of the problems that were identified, right? Like that you don't know what a picostyle is, that you don't ever define what this mysterious transition in the caudal vertebrae that you think is important is. It doesn't explain why you misread cladograms that all show Archaeopteryx as being a bird, as saying that only some of them, as being a dinosaur, and saying that only some of them show it as being a dinosaur, and other ones show it as being a bird but not a dinosaur, even though all of them show Archaeopteryx as being a dinosaur. It's just, the question is it a dinosaur that happens to be a bird or not? That's the question in all the cladograms that you showed. You don't address that. You don't address the fact that you relied on Linnaeus and did not mention the fact that the Linnaean definition for a bird would not let Archaeopteryx be a bird. You just gloss right over that. You didn't give a definition for feather, or even just cite a definition for feather that could be used. Because at least when McLean et al. Cite, Nesbitt, for their definition, for their character-based definition of dinosaur, at least they cite someone. You might not like who they cited, but at least they tried. Even if we just completely dismiss that guy as completely incompetent, at least they got it from somewhere. You can go check to see what their character-based definition is, even if you don't like it. Where she didn't. And so, while I don't think this response is as egregiously awful as her initial paper, maybe she learned a few lessons there, clearly, this is not a good faith attempt to actually address the issues, right? It's an exercise in tone policing and, like, the genetic fallacy. That's all this is. It's tone policing plus genetic fallacy with a little bit of light gaslighting thrown in there, where she just pretends that she didn't say that things that everyone thinks she says. And that's what this paper is. And it's... What years ago, right, when I started doing this, I knew that young Earth creationism was nonsense, right? But I thought that most of the proponents of young Earth creationism, were going to be good faith people who, sure, maybe they had a whole lot of confirmation bias, but like that they were like trying, right? I can't maintain that anymore. I don't think most of them are arguing good faith, and it doesn't seem like they're trying. And
I agree.
yeah, and it's disheartening, right? Because I would rather have a conversation with someone who is not disingenuous, who is arguing in good faith, who is trying to actually get evidence for their position without lying, misrepresenting things, making things up. But that just doesn't seem to be what's happening. At least with most flat earthers who are out there doing silly experiments that don't work, like, it seems like they're just trying and they're just kind of too dumb to figure it out, right? Like, they don't know that, no, you can't actually use your phone's weather app to measure a lapse rate over a frozen lake. Sorry, JM Truth, that's not how it works. Right? Like, but you can tell.
Sorry, I was still cackling at the clip you put in of him today, where it's just like, boy, was I wrong. It never gets old.
Yeah. Well, in my script, all I had was in brackets the word wrong, and I was like, which clip did I have in mind? I'm like, I don't know, but I'm going to use JM Truth. Anyway, and yeah, that's why it's disappointing. Yeah, the twos are appropriate. you can be two of the three. Well-informed, honest, and creationist. And the more well-informed you are, if you say a creationist, the less honest you get. It's really disappointing. And one of the things I ask a lot of the times, and I'll ask it again, if you're a creationist and you watch this, whether you're watching it live or you're watching it in the future, I want to know, why is it so hard for me to conclude that creationists are arguing in good faith, at least in terms of the professional creationist with credentials? Why do they verifiably lie so much? Why do they argue with such bad faith arguments, like Haynes not even addressing the main points? Why is that? Why am I continuously confronted with what seems like bad faith actors within young earth creationism? I'm not going to say that science doesn't have bad faith actors. It obviously does, right? But it's not the norm. And when it's found out, those people tend to be ostracized, not continue to work. Like, Gabriella Haynes isn't going to get fired for this, right? She's going to keep being the pet paleontologist at Answers in Genesis until either she quits or she disagrees with them about theology. Or she retires or dies or something, right? But, like, she's not going to get fired for her amazingly bad paleontology work. When I say amazing, I mean it. I was flabbergasted that anyone could write something this bad. Or that bad, because, we talked about it a few weeks ago. Well, actually, now we talked about it like almost a year ago. Goodness. Anyway. Yeah, so with that, though, thank you so much, everybody. Thank you for airing all those grievances. I hope that all those grievances get resolved before the next Festivus. If you are someone who is celebrating Christmas coming up on Monday, then Merry Christmas to you. I will be doing a like sort of minor Christmassy type thing on Tuesday for Kent with Bent. It's not going to be like a big full-on Christmas episode or anything, but we'll dress it up with a little bit of like Christmas decoration on the set or something, just because it is Christmas. And if you're someone who
any of my Jewish tribe, may your Chinese buffet be tasty.
Or takeout. Takeout's acceptable too.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't rule out that I might get Chinese food on that day.
Look, it's an ancient tradition for a reason.
Look, I only have one meal planned, and it's probably not enough for me to just eat that one meal for the entire day. So, look, feats of strength is something you guys can go do on your own in your own private Festivus celebrations. After this, I am going over to the Discord. We are going to watch some Power Rangers Time Force. So there's that. And let's take a look at what's coming up. Vishanti, is your channel doing anything in the next week or so?
I'm currently house sitting, so I don't really have the same access to all of my stuff that I would need, even though I have just an insane amount of free time. But there's a possibility that I can work on some stuff during the day when I'm not at the office. So I'm going to try to at least get some scripting done. Okay.
Oh, also, if you're someone who celebrates Christmas not on December 25th, but instead on December 25th, then I will wish you a Merry Christmas later on December 25th, not on December 25th. So, just want to put that out there. I'm not ignoring you. I'm just, most of the world is celebrating on December 25th, not December 25th. So, just want to get that out there. What?
Nothing.
It's true.
These are the kinds of things that like really only this audience picks up on.
Yeah, that's true. Well, that's why they're here, though. That's why I have one of the best audiences, because my audience is like a collection of people who are like crazy nerds who get a bunch of my ridiculously obscure references and scientific nonsense and whatnot. So anyway, thank you so much. I hope to see all of you here on let's see, Tuesday when we do Kent with Bent. Then on Thursday, the next episode of the Batty Bodie Dinosaur Delusions will be coming out. That is, I don't know if I can hit the actual right button to go to my YouTube studio without closing everything out. That is, feathery dinosaurs are just fake. Also Behemoth. So once again, we're going to talk about Behemoth because I will never be able to escape talking about Behemoth as long as I cover young Earth creationism. It's just not going to happen. Which sucks because I don't really care that much about Behemoth. Like, I really don't.
Well, when the young Earth creationists stop caring about it.
Yeah, well. And then, yes, on Saturday, there's going to be something else in this slot. I don't know what. It might be just another Dapper Reacts. I might find another Gish talk to talk about for a Gish with Vish, if Vishanti's around. You going to be around in a week?
Yeah, I don't really have any solid plans. So
well, now you do.
We'll figure that out.
No, I'm just speaking for you right now. You now have solid plans. Here.
Being voluntold.
Yes. I am in charge of the calendar now. Look at me. I am the calendar now.
I am the calendar now.
DM current issues and Science Wing for $3 sends a wave bye-bye emoji with what I think is a Shiba Inu dog? Is that what that's supposed to be? I think so. Anyway. All right, guys. We're getting out of here. See you all hopefully on Tuesday. If not, in the Discord for some Power Rangers. Bye, everybody. Hey, before you leave, I just want to take a second to thank my patrons and channel members, especially those pledging $20 or above. Benthoven, Philhavara, Tapioca Weasel, Whispers, Denny5252, Elaran Teller, Horseflesh, Ian Chan, Kelvin Brostek Van Manen, Babby, Sphincters, channel members, and patrons whom you're seeing on screen, that this channel can stay afloat. Without you, it would all shut down. If you want to join the team, there's a link to join the channel below this video, and there's a link to join the Patreon in the description. On the Patreon, you can get a 10% discount for pledging annually, and either way, you get early access to virtually all of my scripted videos, often 3 to 5 months before they come out for the general public. Thanks for watching.